What's up, everybody? My name is David, and I'm a musician. And as a musician, I like to make songs. I've been in bands, and I'll link to some of that stuff below, but lately I've been doing more production music. That's background music for film, television, commercial, internet, and video games. And while that's fun, there's a fair number of genres that I never get to write songs in. And one of those genres is hardcore punk. So I decided to sit down in my spare time and write a hardcore punk song.
Why?
Just for fun. I came of age when 90s punk did. Bands like Green Day, Rancid, NoFX, Lagwagon, they all hit the CD store shelves during my preteen and teenage years. And
Back in my day,
you had to buy CDs to get music. That meant that anything you bought, you listened to over and over and over again, and it was sort of a badge of honor to know of as much music as possible. These days nobody cares, but back then it was important. So from that initial introduction into pop punk, it was natural to branch out to the ska punk of Operation Ivy or the hardcore punk of And there was a local punk scene here in Denver too, bands like Pinhead Circus, Four, and the Nobodies, and going to these all-ages local punk shows at venues like the Raven, which, by the way, was a real shithole in a real bad neighborhood. But going to these local shows was the first time I saw music and said, I can do that. I can easily do that. It's like Cheech said in Up in Smoke. It's punk rock, man. You don't have to know how to play your instrument. You just gotta be a punk. And that's why I chose this genre for this video. Because the songs are short, the music is simple, and the production is stripped down. If you look in my project file, there's just 10 tracks for this particular song, and 4 of those are gang vocals. The song is just over a minute long, and the lyrics are silly and improvised.
the lyrics are silly, but that's okay.
Punk rock is a young person's game. I truly believe that. I feel like most people age out of punk, and I was surprised when I checked out a lot of the bands that I used to listen to in preparation for making this video that they've continued to release albums up until this day. I always sort of felt like the old guy at the punk rock show was kinda sad. But I did go to a show a couple years back that sort of proves my young person's game theory. My brother is a drummer and he had a gig at Art Walk, and somehow this teenage punk rock band, they were booked as the opener. They had this lead singer who was making these hilarious political statements.
This next song is about how if the anarchists and the socialists all got together, we can smash the patriarchy and smash the state. It's called Smash the State. What the fuck you want to?
And it was funny because the parents of all the band members were there, and they were applauding every song, but they were giving each other skeptical looks as if to say,
They'll grow out of this sooner or later, I hope.
So when I wrote my hardcore punk song, I tried not to think too hard about it, and I just wanted to sort of spew meaningless platitudes in a nasally tone of voice. So I improvised the lyrics, and that's why you'll hear a line where I whine about not getting to eat any ice cream. And musically, it was a greater challenge than I was expecting, because I had to not use vibrato while playing guitar, or deliberately come in late while playing the bass, and make myself sound like a bunch of angry kids. It was an exercise in restraint and creativity. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was still really easy. And the good news was, if it sounded like shit, I could always write it off as a stylistic choice.
Revelation.
So I came through the rabbit hole and I had some revelations. The time in my life that I cared most about punk rock was when I was involved in the scene. And that is no small fact. Nearly everyone I know who played punk rock back then that is still playing music today, they are all these like black button-down shirt guys playing solo acoustic alt folk. And it's interesting to me that this group of people who united around a musical and cultural form that stressed individuality and nonconformity have all grown to have the same musical and cultural interests years later in a completely different genre. This sort of indicates that the musical genre was never what was important. It was the community itself. And of course, it's as easy to be angry and aggro as a teenager as it is to be pensive and introspective as you rapidly approach middle age. That's just life, man. So this trip down memory lane was fun. I got to listen to a lot of music from my youth, and while I mentioned some bands earlier in the video, just remember that there were a ton of bands that I didn't mention that were horrible. That when I listened to their music, I felt embarrassed to have ever even liked them. Like, what was I thinking? But you know what? I guess this is just growing up. And I'm a always listen to new stuff type of guy. I don't live in the past, so it was nice to hang out there for a minute, but I wouldn't want to get stuck there. So less talk, more rock. Let's check out that song.
Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. I've had it with this fucking machine. Everything is as bad as it seems. Stormtroopers came and killed my dream, and I never got to eat any ice cream. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure. Blood and treasure, pain and pleasure, made to measure, motherfucker.
So if the anarchists and the socialists all got together, they'd smash that like button, they'd smash that subscribe button, then they'd smash the state. What the fuck you want to fuck it?